Friday afternoon, a routine airline flight from Vienna to Graz with a Fokker 70 twinjet. 72 passengers are looking forward to the weekend. Just a short distance away from home, they do not know that what is about to happen will never be forgotten for the rest of their lives. While the Fokker is approaching Graz in an altitude of approximately 6,500 feet, a helicopter is taking off for a mission over the city. He got the clearance to operate at or below a given altitude. Unfortunately, due to an undetected defect in its altimeter system, the helicopter's altitude is about 1,000 feet too high, exactly at the same level as the Fokker. The pilots in the cockpit of the Fokker are preparing for landing. Because of scattered clouds, they do not have visual contact with the conflicting traffic. When they finally realize the hazard, it's too late for an avoidance maneuver. The Fokker 70 sustains only minor damages, while the helicopter is totally destroyed and crashes into a shopping center in downtown Graz. The crew has no chance of survival. Debris sets vehicles on fire, but luckily the passengers are saved. While rescue operations are initiated at the shopping center, there are two more places where things are getting frantic. During extended system checks, the pilots of the Fokker discover that the landing gear has sustained damage. It is not certain whether the gear can be extended by the normal extension procedure using hydraulic pressure. On the other hand, the landing gear can be extended by taking advantage of the gravitational force. To ensure a complete extension and downlock of the gear, an extreme steep turn has to be flown, during which centrifugal forces double the aircraft's weight. But this maneuver does also not succeed. The crew cannot be certain that the landing gear is extended and locked safely, so the pilots have to assume the worst case, which is collapse of one of the main landing gears during landing. This outlook is brought to the attention of Graz Tower, which immediately alerts rescue services. On board, fuel reserves enable the crew to hold overhead the airport until preparations for an emergency landing are completed on board, as well as on ground. The operating airline is informed about the situation, and it immediately calls the members of the crisis committee.
Die OS 2221 wurde also bekannt gegeben von der Anflugkontrolle Graz.
The communications department's task from now on is to give valid and confirmed information to the media to prevent any speculations. All members of the emergency teams are called to the airport. The passengers of the Fokker require immediate intensive medical care and psychological attention after landing. There are a lot of telephone calls from worried family members and friends of expected passengers. A hotline is installed immediately, and the telephone number is disseminated via the media. If passengers sustain injuries or perish in an accident, the next of kin are called by the airline and given all information available. The so-called special assistance team that cares for the passengers directly at the accident scene is already on the way. While at many different locations, such as the airline and government offices, contingency plans are followed on the ground, landing is prepared in the airplane. The pilots are working through checklists, considering many different factors, for example, necessary landing distance calculations due to changed braking efficiency. Aviation safety means, no doubt about it, to always assume the worst-case scenario. Even when there is a good chance that only the indication light of the landing gear downlock is faulty, an actually unlocked landing gear is suspected. Flight attendants prepare the passengers for the emergency landing. They give information about which seating position gives best protection against bodily injury and what other safety measures need to be taken.
Giving go at emergency stations.
Shortly before touchdown, the signal "brace for impact" is given.
Giving go, brace for impact.
Passengers and cabin crew now assume landing positions on their seats. To stress the importance of assuming the correct position, calls and commands are being repeated until complete standstill of the airplane. Not all passengers can cope with the enormous emotional stress. Quick reactions of the cabin crew are essential to minimize endangerment of other passengers. In this emergency exercise, the right main gear collapses after landing, so an evacuation of the aircraft through the emergency exits and evacuation slides has to be initiated immediately when the aircraft comes to a halt. Ideally, passengers are met by rescue services directly at the aircraft and led away from the scene. If this support is not available, the crew has to take over crowd control.
Schatz, das Flugzeug explodiert, da sind wichtige Sachen drinnen. Du musst da rein.
While the co-pilot assists the cabin crew during evacuation, the captain stays on board and makes sure no occupant is left behind during evacuation. He is the last one to leave the aircraft. While firefighters minimize the risk of fire, injured passengers are brought to a first aid triage center. Here decisions are made about the priority in which order patients need immediate medical treatment and/or transportation to a hospital. Uninjured or lightly injured passengers are led away from the scene, and specially trained personnel with psychological and organizational skills give special care. The most important thing for people involved in an accident is that they are given the opportunity to speak about their experience during the first few hours after the incident. Members of the Special Assistance Team assume this task in close cooperation with psychologists, airport staff, and police. From passenger lists and verbal information made by survivors and rescuers, a comprehensive overview of the condition and whereabouts of all occupants of the aircraft can be established. Thus, requests for information can be answered and uncertainties about the fate of next of kin can be relieved. Victims are categorized according to the degree of their injuries and transported to the hospitals nearby. This action depends completely on contingency plans of emergency organizations like fire departments, Red Cross, and authorities. Communication and cooperation among all involved is of utmost importance. Not only must quick transportation be assured by means of keeping access roads free from traffic not related to the rescue efforts, but also the accident scene has to be protected from unauthorized trespassing by media or onlookers. Especially after an accident, the crew, passengers, and next of kin are entitled to a right of privacy. Relatives and friends of passengers will try to find out about them as soon as information relating to the accident is broadcasted by the media. As we know from experience, there are thousands of phone calls to the published hotline within the first hours. Next of kin who waited to pick up passengers from the airport sometimes find out about the accident from the airport screens. Airline staff will take care of them. The most important thing is to give them the feeling that somebody cares about them and that they are not left alone in this situation. The special assistance team gives them all information available. For the crew, an experience of this magnitude inevitably causes extremely high levels of stress and can easily lead to post-traumatic stress disorders. Therefore, the crew has an immediate need for intensive psychological attention. With the purpose of working through the incident together, a so-called diffusing release is created. Studies prove that crew members who have gone through a defusing session do not show any long-term disorders, while crews that were not given that type of treatment often suffer from the long-term effects of the aftermath and sometimes even quit flying for good. The same holds true for rescue service workers. Even when being used to accidents, the traumatic effects of an airplane crash can never be trained nor coped with mentally. Especially airline staff is subjected to extreme levels of stress and find themselves in a very unusual situation, even when they have been trained for it. The main goal of an exercise like this is to identify the weaknesses and to learn from the mistakes. During debriefings, valuable experience is exchanged among the various organizations and is incorporated into existing contingency plans. The ideal situation of any rescue organization is almost paradox. Equipped with all that's necessary, perfectly trained, cooperating without mistakes, and then developing skills never needed. But this ideal situation will always be just wishful thinking. There will always be a need for rescue organizations, and there will always be room for improvement in training, equipment, and cooperation.